The boy's hands shook so bad, the rifle barrel jumped like a dying fish. 14 years old, standing over his mama's body, tears cutting white lines through the dirt on his face. Behind him, 5 young'uns huddled together in the tall grass. The baby's cry had gone so weak it barely carried on the wind. "You come one step closer, mister, and I'll put a hole clean through you." Jacob McAllister had buried his wife and daughter 10 years back. He'd sworn never to care for another living soul. That oath died the moment he heard that baby cry. This is their story. Stay until the end. Hit that subscribe button and comment your city below so I can see how far this tale has traveled. Jacob heard the crying first. He pulled his horse up short, his hand already moving to the Winchester on his saddle. 42 years of living had taught him one thing: sounds in the wilderness meant trouble. Always. The cry came again, weaker now, a baby, somewhere in the grass. "Easy, Dakota." He swung down from the saddle boots, hitting hard-packed earth. His knees protested. Too many years of riding, too many cold nights sleeping on the ground. He moved through the tall grass, each step careful, each breath measured. His finger rested light on the trigger guard. The grass parted. Jacob stopped dead. A boy stood in a small clearing, a rusted rifle aimed straight at Jacob's chest. The boy's clothes hung off him like they'd been made for someone bigger. His face was all sharp angles and hollow cheeks. But his eyes, Lord, those eyes burned with something fierce. Behind him, children, 5 of them, huddled around a woman, lying still as death on the ground. The littlest one, a girl no more than 5, was crying silent tears. A baby wailed in the arms of an older girl, the sound so thin it hurt to hear. "I said stay back." The boy's voice cracked on the words. "I ain't playing, mister. I'll shoot you dead." Jacob raised his hand slow. "Easy, son. I ain't here to hurt nobody." "That's what they all say." The boy's finger tightened on the trigger. "That's what Uncle Silas said right before he beat my mama bloody. So don't you tell me what you ain't gonna do." "Fair enough." Jacob kept his voice low, steady, the way you'd talk to a spooked horse. "What's your name? Why's it matter? 'Cause I'd like to know who I'm talking to." The boy's jaw worked. Finally, Samuel Baker. "Sam." Jacob nodded once. "I'm Jacob McAllister. Folks call me Jake. I got a ranch about 5 miles east of here. That woman behind you, she your mama. What's it to you? She looks real sick, Sam. She needs a doctor." "She's fine. She's just resting." "Son," Jacob's voice gentled, "she ain't resting. She's dying." Sam flinched like Jacob had struck him. The rifle wavered. "Sam," a small voice came from behind. The little girl, the crying one, stepped forward. Her dress was torn, her feet bare and bloody. "Sam, Mama won't wake up. I've been trying and trying, but she won't open her eyes." "Josie, get back." "I'm scared, Sam." Josie's voice broke. "I'm real scared. Mama always wakes up when I call her. Always. But now she won't, and I don't know what to do, and I said get back." The little girl burst into sobs. An older girl, maybe 10, pulled Josie close, wrapping thin arms around her. "It's okay, Josie," the older girl whispered. "It's gonna be okay." But her eyes, when they met Jacob's, said she didn't believe it. Jacob took a slow step forward. "Sam, I can help, but you gotta let me." "Why?" The word tore out of Sam's throat. "Why would you help us? Nobody helps us. We've been running for 3 weeks, and ain't nobody lifted a finger. Folks just look at us and turn away, like we ain't even human, like we ain't worth nothing." "I ain't those folks." "You're a man, ain't you?" Sam's voice turned bitter. "Men don't help for free. Men take. That's all they do. Take and hurt and—" "Sam." The older girl holding Hope spoke up. She was maybe 12, with tired eyes and a jaw set hard with determination. "Sam, the baby's real bad. She ain't hardly cried in the last hour. And Mama," her voice caught, "Mama gave us all her food. Every last crumb. She ain't eaten in 4 days. If we don't get help— I know, Maggie. You think I don't know? Sam's composure cracked, just for a second. Just long enough for Jacob to see the terrified boy underneath. But what am I supposed to do? Trust some stranger after everything? You're supposed to keep us alive. Maggie's voice was quiet but fierce. That's what Mama said. Whatever it takes, Sam. Whatever it takes. Brother and sister stared at each other. Something passed between them, a whole conversation without words. Then a small body broke from the group. Before anyone could stop her, Josie ran straight to Jacob and wrapped her arms around his leg. Please, mister. She looked up at him with huge wet eyes. Please help my mama. She's all we got. Please. I'll be good. I'll be so good. I won't ask for nothing ever again. Just please don't let my mama die. Jacob looked down at that small, desperate face. Felt those tiny arms clinging to him like he was the last solid thing in a world gone to pieces. Something cracked open in his chest. Something he'd kept locked away for 10 years. I'll help her. His voice came out rough. I swear to you, little one. I'll help. Sam lowered the rifle. Not all the way. Just enough to show he wasn't fixing to shoot. His eyes stayed hard, watching Jacob's every move. Maggie, give me the baby. Jacob moved toward the group. I got jerky and hardtack in my saddlebag. It ain't much, but I'll get it. A boy around 7 jumped up, all arms and legs and nervous energy. I can get it. Which horse? That one. I know how to open saddlebags. Pa taught me before he— Billy, wait. Maggie started. But the boy was already running toward Dakota, bare feet flying over the grass. He ain't got no shoes, Jacob said. None of us do. Maggie's voice was flat. We sold 'em. 3 towns back. Needed the money for food. Jacob felt something hot rise in his chest. Anger, the kind that burned slow and deep. He knelt beside the woman on the ground. Up close, she looked even worse. Dark hair matted with sweat and dirt, lips cracked and bleeding, skin so pale it seemed almost blue, bruises on her arms, on her neck, some old yellow, some fresh purple. Jesus Christ, he breathed. Don't take the Lord's name in vain. The 10-year-old Carrie, he'd learn later, spoke for the first time. Her voice was barely a whisper. Mama says it's a sin. Your mama's right. Jacob touched the woman's forehead, burning hot. I'm sorry. He checked her pulse. Faint. Too fast. Her breathing came shallow and ragged. How long since she ate? 4 days, Maggie said. Maybe 5. She kept saying she wasn't hungry, but she was lying. She always lies about that. Gives us her portion and says she already ate. And water. We ran out yesterday morning. There was a creek, but we couldn't find it again. We got lost, and— Maggie's voice cracked. We tried so hard, but nothing worked. Nothing ever works. Billy came running back, Jacob's saddlebag bouncing against his legs. I got it. I got the food. Jacob took the bag and pulled out what he had. Dried beef, hard biscuits, a canteen still half full of water. Go slow, he warned as the children fell on the food. You eat too fast, you'll sick it right back up. I know. Maggie was already portioning out the food, giving the little ones first, making sure everyone got equal shares. Carry small bites. Billy, don't you wolf that down. Josie, chew proper. She had the manner of someone who'd been mothering long before her time. What about you? Jacob asked. I'll eat after. You'll eat now. He pressed jerky into her hand. Can't take care of them if you fall over. Maggie looked at the food, then at him. Something shifted in her expression. Just a flicker. The barest hint of trust. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet. We got a long walk ahead. Getting the woman onto his horse was the hard part. Jacob lifted her, careful, mindful of her injuries. She weighed next to nothing. Just bones and fever and stubborn will to live. Billy, Josie, you'll ride with your mama. Hold her steady. Can you do that? Yes, sir. Billy scrambled up onto Dakota's back like he'd been doing it his whole life. "I'm good with horses. Pa said I was a natural." "I believe it." Jacob lifted Josie up next, settling her in front of her brother. "You hold on tight to your mama here. Don't let go for nothing." "I won't." Josie wrapped her small arms around her mother's waist. "I got her." "Maggie, you carry Hope. Carrie, you stay close to your sister. Sam." Jacob met the boy's eyes. "You can walk behind with that rifle if it makes you feel better. Keep it pointed at my back the whole way. But we need to move. Now." Sam's jaw tightened. For a moment Jacob thought he'd argue. Then, "Fine. But if you try anything at all, I'll shoot you. I swear it." "I know you will." They started walking. The sun beat down merciless and mean. Jacob kept the pace steady fast enough that they'd reach town before nightfall, slow enough that the children's tired legs could keep up. Nobody spoke much. They were all too exhausted, too hungry, too scared. The only sounds were footsteps in the grass and the occasional weak cry from baby Hope. After maybe a mile, Carrie moved up beside Jacob. She walked with her head down, watching her bloody feet, but her voice came quiet and clear. "Mister?" "Yes, Miss Carrie." She startled at the miss. I mean nobody calls me that." "Well, I do. What's on your mind?" Carrie was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Is Mama really gonna die?" Jacob considered lying. Considered giving her some easy comfort that would fall apart the moment they reached town. But this girl had seen too much already. She deserved the truth. "I don't know," he said honestly. "She's real sick, but there's a doctor in town. He's good. If anyone can help her, he can." "What if he can't? Then we'll figure it out from there." "That's what Mama always says." Carrie's voice wobbled. "We'll figure it out. But we never do. We just keep running and nothing ever gets better. Maybe this time's different. Why would it be?" Jacob didn't have an answer for that. They walked in silence for a while. Then Billy's voice piped up from the horse. "Hey, mister, you got a gun right?" "I do." "Can you shoot good?" "Good enough." "Better than Uncle Silas's men." Jacob's eyes narrowed. "Your uncle has men. Hired guns." Sam's voice came from behind, cold and hard. "3 of them. They've been tracking us since Colorado. Almost caught us twice." "What happened?" "Mama happened." There was fierce pride in Sam's voice. "She's smart, smarter than they figured. She led us through a river once to throw off the trail. Another time she hid us in a barn for 2 days while they searched the town." "Your mama sounds like quite a woman." "She is." Sam paused. "She was a schoolteacher before she married Pa. Read more books than anyone I know. She taught all of us to read and write and do figures. Said education was the one thing nobody could take from us. She was right about that." The conversation died. They kept walking. After another mile, Maggie spoke up. "Mr. McAllister, Jake's fine." "Jake." She tested the name. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Why'd you stop when you heard Hope crying? Most folks would have kept riding. We've seen it happen. People hear us, see us, and they just keep going. Like we're invisible." Jacob was quiet for a long moment. The question deserved a real answer, not some easy platitude. 10 years ago, he said finally. "I had a wife, Sarah, and a daughter, Emma. Emma was just about Hope's age when the fever took them both. Died within 3 days of each other." He paused, the old grief rising up sharp and familiar. "After that, I swore I'd never care for anyone again. Built a wall around myself. Kept everyone out. Figured it was easier that way." "Was it easier? Maybe. Better." Jacob shook his head. "No, just lonelier." "So why'd you stop today?" "Because when I heard that baby crying, I heard Emma. I heard every prayer I made while she was dying. Every plea for someone, anyone to help us." His voice roughened. "Nobody came for my family. But maybe I could come for someone else's." Maggie was silent for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was thick. "Mama prayed too, every night. Asked God to send us help. Asked him to send someone good. And what, you think I'm the answer to those prayers? Maggie looked at him with eyes too old for 12. I don't know yet, but you're the first person who stopped. That's gotta mean something. Willow Creek appeared on the horizon as the sun started its slide toward evening. It wasn't much of a town. A main street. A general store. A church with a crooked steeple. Maybe 30 buildings total, all of them weathered gray by sun and wind. But it had a doctor, and right now, that made it the most important place in the world. People stopped and stared as they came down the main street. Jacob saw the looks, the narrowed eyes, the turned backs, the whispered conversations behind raised hands. A woman with 6 children, obviously in trouble, obviously bringing complications nobody wanted. They're staring, Josie said tremulously. Let 'em stare. Jacob kept his voice calm. Ain't none of their business. A man stepped off the boardwalk, blocking their path. Big fellow, red face, mean eyes. Now what do we got here? His voice carried. Some drifter bringing trouble to our town. I'm bringing a sick woman to the doctor. Step aside. Don't reckon I will. The man crossed his arms. We don't need no charity cases in Willow Creek. Got enough problems of our own without taking on other folks' messes. Jacob felt Sam tense behind him, felt the boy's finger moving toward the trigger. This woman needs help, Jacob said, his voice going flat and dangerous. Her children need food and shelter. Now I'm asking you polite step aside. And if I don't? Jacob moved so fast the man didn't see it coming. One moment he was standing there, arms crossed, looking smug. The next, Jacob had him by the shirt front, lifted half off his feet. Then I'll move you myself. Jacob's voice was quiet, deadly. And you won't enjoy it. The man's face went pale. He'd thought Jacob was some soft-hearted fool. He was learning different. All right, all right. He scrambled backward when Jacob released him. No need for violence. Just trying to look out for the town is all. Look out for it somewhere else. The man retreated. The crowd parted. Jacob led his strange procession on toward the doctor's office, feeling the weight of hostile stares on his back. That was something, Sam muttered from behind. That was nothing. Come on. The sign read, Henry Whitfield, M.D., in faded black letters. Jacob pounded on the door. Doc Whitfield, I got an emergency. The door swung open. A man in his 50s stood there, gray-haired, sharp-eyed, with the steady hands of someone who'd seen the worst and learned to fix it. He took one look at the woman on Jacob's horse and snapped into motion. Bring her in, now. Jacob carried Ruth inside and laid her on the examination table. She was so light, like carrying a ghost. Doc Whitfield worked fast, checking her pulse, her breathing, her pupils. His jaw tightened when he found the bruises. Someone did this to her. Her brother-in-law, from what the boy says. Bastard. The word came out hard and flat. Agnes, I need you. A woman appeared from the back, sturdy, kind-faced, with capable hands and knowing eyes. She took one look at the children crowding the doorway and understood everything. Come with me, little ones. Let's get you fed proper while the doctor sees to your mama. But Maggie clutched Hope tighter. I should stay. Your mama's in good hands. Agnes's voice was gentle but firm. Best thing you can do for her now is take care of yourself and these young'uns. When's the last time that baby had milk? We ran out days ago. I've been giving her water and softened bread, but Lord have mercy. Agnes took Hope from Maggie's arms with practiced ease. Come, all of you, now. She herded the children toward the back. Billy went willingly, already chattering about food. Carrie followed close behind Maggie, her hand twisted in her sister's dress. Josie clung to Jacob's leg. Go on, little one. Jacob gently pried her loose. Mrs. Agnes will take good care of you. Promise you won't leave. I promise. Josie searched his face for the lie. Whatever she found made her nod just once before running after her siblings. Only Sam remained planted in the doorway, rifle still in hand. "I'm staying." "Figured you would." Jacob pulled up a chair. "Sit. You ain't slept proper in days." "I don't need—" "Boy." Jacob's voice brooked no argument. "Sit. Down." Sam sat. They watched in silence as Doc Whitfield worked. He cleaned Ruth's wounds, brought down her fever with cool compresses, dripped water between her cracked lips, drop by careful drop. The minutes crawled by like hours. "She's been through hell," Whitfield said, finally straightening up. "Dehydration, malnutrition, infection starting in some of these cuts, and the fever." He shook his head. "Another day out there she'd have been gone. But she'll make it." Sam's voice cracked. "I think so. She's strong, stronger than she looks." Whitfield met Jacob's eyes. "Someone beat this woman bad, more than once from the look of these bruises." "Her brother-in-law," Jacob said. "Name of Silas Crawford. Been chasing her and the children for 3 weeks. He wants the kids. And control over whatever property her dead husband left. The boy says Crawford's got hired guns tracking them." Whitfield's expression darkened. "So trouble's coming to Willow Creek." "Looks that way. You planning to stay mixed up in this?" Jacob looked at Sam, this boy who'd stood guard over his family with a rusted rifle and raw courage. Thought of Maggie, who'd carried her baby sister for miles without complaint. Of Billy's nervous energy and Carrie's quiet fear, and Josie's desperate hope. Thought of Emma, of Sarah, of prayers that went unanswered. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I reckon I am." Ruth woke as the sun was setting. Her eyes flew open, wild with panic. She tried to sit up, arms flailing. "My children, where are my—" "They're safe, ma'am." Jacob was at her side in an instant. "All 6 of them. They're in the back room eating their first real meal in days." Ruth's wild eyes found his face. Who are you?" "Jacob McAllister. I found you and your young'uns out on the prairie. Your boy Sam was standing guard with a rifle." "Sam!" Ruth's face crumpled. "Oh God, Sam. I told him if anything happened to me, I told him to protect them." "He did." Jacob's voice was firm. "He did everything right. You raised a good boy, ma'am. A brave boy." Ruth stared at him, searching his face for the lie, the trick, the hidden angle. Jacob stood still and let her look. "Why?" she whispered finally. "Why did you help us?" "Because I heard your baby crying and couldn't ride past. Men don't help for nothing. Men always want— I know what some men want." Jacob cut her off, his voice hard. "I know what your brother-in-law wants. I ain't him. I ain't any of them. I'm just a man who buried his wife and daughter 10 years ago and heard something in that baby's cry that brought it all back." He paused. "You don't have to trust me. You don't have to believe me. But your children are safe and you're gonna recover, and that's what matters right now." Ruth's eyes filled with tears. "Mama!" The door burst open. Josie came flying across the room and launched herself at the examination table. Ruth caught her with weak arms, holding her daughter close, tears streaming down her face. The others followed Billy, climbing up beside his mother, Carrie pressing close, Maggie approaching with hope in her arms, even Sam abandoning his post to stand beside the table. "Mama, Mama, Mama," Josie sobbed. "I thought you was dead. I thought you was never gonna wake up." "I'm here, baby." Ruth's voice broke. "I'm here. I ain't going nowhere." "You promise?" "I promise." Jacob stepped back, feeling like he was intruding on something sacred. But before he could leave, Ruth's voice stopped him. "Mr. McAllister." He turned. She was looking at him over her children's heads, her gray-blue eyes wet but steady. "You saved us," she said simply. "I just did what any decent man would do." "No." Ruth's voice was fierce. "You did what nobody else would. 3 weeks we've been running. 3 weeks of closed doors and turned backs and folks who wouldn't give us the time of day. You're the first person who stopped, the first person who helped." She paused. "I don't know how to repay that." "Get well. Keep your family together. That's all the payment I need." He tipped his hat and walked out into the fading light. Jacob made arrangements at the livery for Dakota, then headed toward the boarding house. Martha Jenkins ran the place, a widow who'd raised 5 children on her own. If anyone would take in Ruth and her young'uns without judgment, it would be her. He was halfway down the main street when he felt it. Someone watching. Jacob's hand moved casual-like toward his gun. He kept walking, but his eyes scanned the shadows. The storefronts. The alleys between buildings. There. A man stood at the far end of the street, half hidden in the shadow of the mercantile. Well-dressed. City clothes. Too clean for Willow Creek. He was watching the doctor's office with the patience of a hunter waiting for his prey. As Jacob watched, the man turned his head. Their eyes met across the dusty street. The man smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who'd just found what he was looking for. Then he tipped his hat, a mocking gesture, and walked away into the gathering dark. Jacob's blood ran cold. He found Sheriff Brennan at the jail, feet up on his desk, cleaning his rifle. "Tom." "Jake." Brennan looked up, read something in Jacob's face. "Trouble." "Might be. You seen any strangers in town today? Well-dressed fellow, city clothes?" "Can't say I have." "Why?" Jacob told him. About Ruth, about the children, about Silas Crawford and his hired guns. Brennan's feet came down off the desk. "You sure about this?" "Sure as I can be. I just saw a man watching Doc Whitfield's place. Didn't belong here. And the way he looked at me—" Jacob shook his head. He knew Tom. Knew exactly who I was and what I'd brought into town. Silas Crawford. Maybe. Or one of his men. Either way, trouble's here. Brennan stood reaching for his hat. "I'll put out word. See if anyone else has noticed strangers. In the meantime, I know, I'll keep watch." "You sure you want to be mixed up in this, Jake? This ain't your fight." Jacob thought of Sam's trembling hands on that rifle. Of Josie's arms wrapped around his leg. Of Ruth's eyes so full of fear and hope and desperate gratitude. "Yeah," he said quietly. "It is." He didn't sleep that night. Jacob sat in a chair by the window of the room Martha Jenkins had given him, his rifle across his knees, watching the dark street below. The boarding house was quiet. Ruth and the children were asleep in rooms down the hall, finally safe, finally warm, finally fed. But safety was an illusion. Jacob knew that now. Silas Crawford had found them. The man in the shadows proved it. Whatever came next, whatever violence or legal maneuvering or outright war, it was coming soon. Jacob thought about Ruth. About the way she'd looked at him searching for the lie. She'd been hurt so bad so many times that she expected betrayal the way most folks expected sunrise. He thought about the children. Sam's fierce protectiveness. Maggie's bone-deep exhaustion. Carrie's quiet fear. Billy's nervous energy. Josie's desperate hope. Baby Hope's weak cries. 6 children. 1 mother. 3 weeks of running. And now a stranger who'd stumbled into their lives and couldn't bring himself to stumble back out. "What are you doing, old man?" Jacob muttered to himself. "What the hell are you doing?" But he knew. Deep down in that broken place where Sarah and Emma still lived, he knew. He was doing what he wished someone had done for him. What no one had done for him. He was fighting for a family that wasn't his. And God help him, he was going to keep fighting until they were safe. Dawn came gray and cold. Jacob was still awake, still watching when he saw the rider, a man on a black horse moving slow down the main street. Well-dressed, city clothes. The same man from last night, Jacob was sure of it. The rider stopped in front of the boarding house. He looked up at the windows, taking his time, making sure he was seen. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper. He held it up, letting the early light catch it before tucking it into the doorframe of the mercantile across the street. A message. A threat. A promise of what was coming. The rider tipped his hat toward Jacob's window, that same mocking smile on his face. Then he turned his horse and rode slow out of town. Jacob waited until he was gone. Then he crossed the street and pulled the paper from the doorframe. The message was short. Elegant handwriting. Expensive paper. The woman and children are my legal property. I will have them back. Anyone who interferes will be dealt with accordingly. You have been warned. It was signed with a single word, Crawford. Jacob read it twice. Then he folded it careful and put it in his pocket. The war had begun. Jacob didn't show Ruth the note. Not yet. She was still too weak, still fighting to get her strength back, and the last thing she needed was more fear piled on top of everything else. But he showed it to Sheriff Brennan. Silas Crawford. Brennan read the note twice, his jaw tightening. Man's got nerve, I'll give him that. Riding into my town, leaving threats like he owns the place. He thinks he does. Jacob leaned against the doorframe of the sheriff's office. He's got money, lawyers, hired guns. In his mind, that makes him untouchable. Nobody's untouchable. Brennan folded the note and handed it back. What do you aim to do? Keep them safe, whatever that takes. You know what that might mean if Crawford pushes this legal, if he brings lawyers and court orders. Then we'll fight him legal. Jacob's voice was flat. And if he brings guns instead, we'll fight him that way too. Brennan studied him for a long moment. You really gonna stake your life on a woman you just met, on 6 children that ain't yours? Jacob thought about the question. A week ago, his answer would have been different. A week ago, he'd been a man alone, content in his solitude, convinced he'd never let himself care for another living soul. But that was before Josie wrapped her arms around his leg and begged him to save her mama. Before Sam lowered his rifle and let himself trust. Before he saw Ruth's eyes so full of fear and hope and desperate need, and felt something long dead stir in his chest. Yeah, he said quietly. I reckon I am. Ruth was sitting up when Jacob returned to the boarding house. She looked better, still pale, still thin, but there was color in her cheeks and strength in her voice when she spoke. The children told me what you did. She was watching him with those gray-blue eyes, searching, measuring. They said you stood up to a man in the street, nearly lifted him off his feet. He was in the way. Sam said you looked like you could have killed him. Said he'd never seen a man move that fast. Jacob shrugged. I got a temper. Ain't proud of it. I am. Ruth's voice was quiet but fierce. I'm proud someone finally stood up for us. Do you know how long it's been since anyone did that? Since anyone looked at us and saw something worth protecting? Too long, I'd wager. 3 years. Ruth's hands twisted in the blanket covering her lap. That's how long Thomas has been gone. 3 years of fighting to keep what's ours. 3 years of Silas circling like a vulture waiting for me to fail. Her voice hardened. He wanted me to marry him, you know. Said it was the proper thing for a widow with children. Said I needed a man to manage my affairs. What did you say? I said I'd rather die than marry the man who stood by while his brother was crushed in a mine collapse. The man who blamed Thomas for his own death so he could try to claim what Thomas built. Ruth's chin lifted. That's when he stopped asking and started taking. Jacob felt that slow burn anger rising again. He beat you for saying no. The first time, yes. The second time was when I refused to sign over the deed to our land. The third time, Ruth's voice caught. The third time was when I packed the children in the middle of the night and ran. How'd he find you? I don't know. Money, I suppose. He's got enough to buy eyes and ears in every town between Colorado and Montana. Ruth looked at Jacob, something desperate flickering in her expression. He'll find us here too. He always finds us. And when he does, he'll have to go through me. Ruth stared at him. Why? Why would you risk that for us? You don't know us. We're nothing to you. You ain't nothing. Jacob's voice came out rougher than he intended. Your children ain't nothing. And a man who beats a woman for saying no, who chases her across 3 territories just to drag her back under his thumb, that man's got a reckoning coming. You can't fight the law. If Silas brings lawyers, if he gets a court order, then we'll fight the law with law. I got some money saved. Enough to hire a lawyer of our own. And Sheriff Brennan's already asking questions, putting out word to watch for strangers. Crawford might have money, but he ain't got Willow Creek. Ruth was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. You're either the kindest man I've ever met, or the biggest fool. Might be both. Jacob allowed himself a small smile. Ain't mutually exclusive. For the first time since he'd found her, Ruth laughed. It was a broken sound, more sob than humor, but it was real. I don't know what to do with you, Jacob McAllister. You don't have to do anything with me. Just focus on getting well. Rest of it we'll figure out as we go. The days that followed settled into a rhythm. Ruth grew stronger, able to walk short distances to sit with her children for meals, to help Agnes with small tasks around the boarding house. The color returned to her face. The fear in her eyes began slowly, tentatively to fade. The children bloomed like flowers after a drought. Billy's nervous energy transformed into genuine enthusiasm. He followed Jacob everywhere, peppering him with questions about horses and guns and what it was like to fight in the war. Did you kill anyone? Billy asked one afternoon, watching Jacob mend a harness in the livery. That ain't a question you ask a man's son. Why not? Because killing ain't something a man brags about. It's something he carries. And if he's any kind of decent, it weighs on him till the day he dies. Billy was quiet for a moment. Then, Pa never talked about the mine neither. Mama said some things are too heavy for words. Your mama's a smart woman. I know. Billy kicked at the dirt. I miss Pa something awful. He used to carry me on his shoulders and call me his little deputy. Said when I grew up I'd be bigger than him. You will be. You got his build. Billy looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. You knew Pa? No, but I see him in you. In all of you. The way Sam stands guard. The way Maggie takes care of everyone. The way you ask questions and keep pushing till you get answers. Jacob set down the harness. Your Pa raised good children. That tells me everything I need to know about the man he was. Billy's eyes filled with tears. He scrubbed at them fiercely, embarrassed to be caught crying. I ain't a baby, he muttered. Never said you were. A man cries for his Pa, that ain't weakness. That's love. Nothing wrong with love. Billy stood there for a long moment, wrestling with something. Then he stepped forward and wrapped his thin arms around Jacob's waist, holding on tight. Jacob froze. The touch was unexpected, the trust behind it even more so. Slowly, carefully, he put his hand on the boy's head. It's all right, son. It's all right. Carrie was harder to reach. She stayed close to Maggie, watching Jacob with wary eyes, flinching whenever he moved too quickly or spoke too loud. The skittishness spoke of old wounds, old fears. She saw it. Maggie told Jacob one evening when the younger children were asleep and Ruth was resting. When Uncle Silas hit Mama, Carrie saw the whole thing. She ain't been right since. How old was she? 8. She's 10 now. Maggie's voice was flat, matter-of-fact, hiding the pain beneath. She used to talk all the time, laughing, singing, asking questions about everything. Now she barely says a word unless you ask her direct. Give her time. It's been 2 years. Maggie's composure cracked just for a moment. How much time does she need? How much time do any of us need to forget what he did? Jacob didn't have an answer for that. He knew from experience that some wounds never healed. They just scarred over, the pain dulled, but never gone. The breakthrough with Carrie came unexpectedly 3 days later. Jacob was sitting on the boarding house porch, whittling a piece of wood into something that might eventually resemble a horse. He'd always been good with his hands, finding peace in the slow, methodical work. Carrie appeared beside him, silent as a ghost. She stood there for a long moment, watching him work. "What are you making?" Her voice was so soft, Jacob barely heard it. "Trying for a horse. Might end up a dog. We'll see. Can I watch?" "Pull up a chair." Carrie sat tucking her legs under her eyes fixed on the knife and the wood. They sat in comfortable silence for maybe 20 minutes, the only sound the soft scrape of blade against pine. "Pa used to whittle," Carrie said finally. "He made me a bird once. A bluebird. I kept it under my pillow every night." "You still got it?" "No." Carrie's voice dropped. "Uncle Silas took it. Said I was too old for toys. Said I needed to grow up and stop acting like a child." She paused. "He threw it in the fire. Made me watch it burn." Jacob's hands stilled on the wood. He felt that familiar rage building, the kind that wanted to find Silas Crawford and make him answer for every cruelty, every stolen comfort, every tear he'd caused. But rage wouldn't help Carrie, so he pushed it down and kept his voice gentle. "What kind of bird was it, the one your pa made?" "A bluebird. Like I said, Pa said they meant happiness. Said whenever I felt sad I should hold that bird and remember that happy days would come again." "Were they the happy days?" "For a while." Carrie's eyes were distant, lost in memory. "Before Pa died. Before Uncle Silas came. We were happy then. Mama laughed all the time. Pa told jokes at supper. Sam wasn't so serious. Maggie played instead of working." Her voice cracked. "I don't remember what it felt like. Being happy, I mean. I try to remember, but it's like trying to hold water in my hands." Jacob finished the rough shape of the horse and held it up to the light. It wasn't much. Crude, unfinished. But it was something. "Here." He handed it to Carrie. "It ain't a bluebird, but it's yours. Nobody can take it from you." Carrie stared at the wooden horse like he'd handed her a piece of gold. Her fingers trembled as she took it. "Why?" She looked up at him, confusion and something like hope warring in her eyes. "Why are you so kind to us?" "Because someone should be." Jacob picked up another piece of wood. "Now you want to learn how to whittle, I can teach you if you like." Carrie nodded, a tiny smile breaking through the clouds on her face. "I'd like that." They sat together until supper, Jacob showing her how to hold the knife, how to work with the grain, how to coax shapes out of raw wood. Carrie didn't say much, but she didn't need to. The tension in her shoulders eased. The fear in her eyes dimmed. It wasn't healing, not yet. But it was a start. Sam remained the hardest nut to crack. The boy had appointed himself his family's protector, and he wasn't about to give up that role to some stranger, no matter how kind that stranger seemed. He watched Jacob constantly looking for cracks in the facade. When Jacob helped Ruth down the stairs, Sam was there watching. When Jacob played with Josie or talked with Billy, Sam was there watching. When Jacob sat with Carrie on the porch, Sam was there watching, always watching, never trusting. "He doesn't like you," Maggie said one afternoon, stating the obvious. "I know." "It's not personal. He doesn't like any man, not since Uncle Silas." "I figured." Jacob paused. "What was Sam like before?" "Before your pa died." Maggie thought about it. "Happy, carefree. He used to play pranks on everyone, hid Mama's bonnet, once put a frog in Billy's bed. Pa would pretend to be mad, but you could see him trying not to laugh." Her voice softened with memory. "Sam wanted to be just like Pa. Followed him everywhere. Learned everything he could about mining, about horses, about being a man. And then your Pa died. And then Pa died. And Sam decided he had to take his place." Maggie's eyes were old, too old. He was 12 years old, and he thought the whole family was his responsibility. Mama tried to tell him different, but he wouldn't listen. Said Pa would have wanted him to step up. He wasn't wrong. No. But he wasn't right either. He's still a child, Mr. McAllister. Underneath all that anger and watchfulness, he's still just a boy who misses his father. Jacob found Sam behind the livery that evening, throwing rocks at a fence post with focused intensity. Each throw landed with a satisfying thunk. "Good arm," Jacob said, leaning against the wall. Sam didn't look at him. "What do you want?" "Nothing. Just noticed you back here." "So you followed me. Ain't that what folks call stalking? Could call it concern." Sam snorted, threw another rock. "Don't need your concern." "Didn't say you needed it. Said I felt it." Another rock. Another thunk. "You think I don't know what you're doing? Playing nice with the little ones, getting Mama to trust you, I seen it before. Men acting kind till they get what they want." "What is it you think I want, Sam?" "I don't know yet." Sam finally turned his eyes blazing. "But I'll figure it out. And when I do, when you show your true colors, I'll be ready. I won't let you hurt them. I won't let anyone hurt them ever again." Jacob was quiet for a long moment. The boy's anger was a shield, and underneath it was something far more fragile. "You know what I see when I look at you, Sam?" "Don't care. I see a boy who's been carrying a weight too heavy for his shoulders. A boy who thinks he has to be strong every minute of every day, because if he's not, everything'll fall apart. A boy who won't let himself grieve because grieving feels like giving up." Sam's jaw tightened. "You don't know nothing about me." "I know more than you think." Jacob pushed off the wall and stepped closer. "I know what it's like to lose someone you love. I know what it's like to feel like you failed them. I know what it's like to build walls so high you can't remember what it felt like to let someone in. Good for you. It ain't good. It's lonely. And it's no way to live." Jacob met Sam's hostile gaze steadily. "I ain't asking you to trust me. I ain't asking you to like me. But I am asking you to let me help carry the load. You don't have to do this alone anymore." "I ain't alone. I got Maggie. Maggie's 13. She's carrying her own weight. So's your mama. You really want to add yours to theirs?" Sam's face crumpled just for a second, just long enough for Jacob to see the exhausted, frightened boy beneath the defiant mask. "I don't know how to stop," Sam whispered. "I don't know how to be anything else. You start small. Let me take watch tonight. You sleep." "I can't." "You can. I'll be right outside your door. Anyone comes for your family, they'll have to go through me first. But you, Sam Baker, you get one full night of sleep. That's not giving up. That's trusting someone else to stand guard for a change." Sam stood frozen, every muscle taut with the need to refuse, to maintain control, to keep being the protector he'd forced himself to become. Then his shoulders sagged. "One night," he said hoarsely. "That's all. That's enough." That night, for the first time in 3 weeks, Sam slept through till dawn, and when he emerged the next morning, something in his eyes had shifted. Not trust, not yet, but something close. The first crack in the wall. A week after Ruth arrived in Willow Creek, she was strong enough to leave the boarding house for short walks. Jacob accompanied her partly for protection, partly because he found he wanted to. "The town's pretty," Ruth said, looking at the storefronts and the distant mountains. "Reminds me of home, before everything went wrong." Where was home? A little valley in Colorado. Thomas built us a cabin there with a view of the peaks. Every morning I'd wake up and see the sun hitting the snow, and I'd think, this is it. This is the life I always wanted. Her voice turned wistful. Funny how fast things can change. Life's got a way of pulling the rug out. It does. Ruth glanced at him. "You lost your wife and daughter. Maggie told me. I'm sorry." "It was a long time ago." "Does that help time?" Jacob considered the question honestly. "Some. The sharp edges wear down. You stop expecting to see them every time you turn around. But the missing that never goes away. You just learn to live with the whole." Ruth nodded slowly. "That's what I'm afraid of." That this feeling, this constant fear, this waiting for the next blow will never go away. That even if Silas stops chasing us, I'll spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. Maybe. Or maybe you'll build something new. Something strong enough to stand against the fear. You make it sound easy. Nothing about it's easy, but possible and easy ain't the same thing. They walked in silence for a while, past the general store, and the blacksmith, past the church with its crooked steeple. People nodded at them as they passed, some friendly, some curious, a few openly hostile. They don't all approve, Ruth observed. Don't matter what they approve. What matters is what's right. And you think helping us is right? I know it is. Ruth stopped walking. She turned to face him, her gray-blue eyes searching his face. I've been thinking, she said slowly, about what happens next. Even if Silas doesn't find us, and he will, he always does, I can't stay at the boarding house forever. I need work, a way to support my children. But a widow with 6 young ones. She laughed bitterly. Nobody wants that kind of complication. I might have an idea. What kind of idea? There's a schoolhouse in town. Been sitting empty since the last teacher moved on. Town's been looking for someone new, but most folks who can teach don't want to live this far from civilization. Jacob paused. Maggie says you used to teach, before you married. Ruth's eyes widened. You think they'd hire me? I think it's worth asking. Doc Whitfield's got some pull around here. So does the Reverend. If they speak up for you. Why would they? They don't know me. They know what they've seen. A woman who gave everything to protect her children. A mother who starved herself so her young'uns could eat. That counts for something in a town like this. Ruth was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. You've done so much already. I don't know how to... Don't thank me yet. Ain't nothing guaranteed. I'm not thanking you. Ruth reached out and touched his arm, a brief, hesitant gesture. I'm just trying to understand. What kind of man does what you've done, without expectation, without demand, without... The kind who knows what it's like to need help and find none. Their eyes met. Something passed between them, a recognition, an understanding that went beyond words. Then Josie came running around the corner, shattering the moment. Mama, Mr. Jake, come quick. Sam's fighting with a man in front of the store. Jacob was moving before Josie finished speaking. He rounded the corner to find Sam squared off against a man he didn't recognize, young, rough-looking, with mean eyes and a meaner smile. Say it again. Sam was growling, his fists clenched. I dare you. I said your mama's probably whoring herself out to that cowboy. How else does a woman pay her way when she ain't got no money? Sam launched himself at the man, fists flying. The stranger laughed and caught him easily, throwing the boy to the ground. Pathetic. This is what your family's got protecting them. A scrawny kid who... The man didn't finish the sentence. Jacob's fist connected with his jaw, snapping his head back. Before the stranger could recover, Jacob had him by the collar, lifted half off his feet. You got something to say about that boy's family? Jacob's voice was quiet, deadly. You say it to me. The man's bravado crumbled. It was just talk. Talk has consequences. Jacob shoved him backward. Now you got 2 choices. Apologize to the boy and his mother, then get out of Willow Creek, or stay and deal with me. I ain't afraid of you. Then you're dumber than you look. Jacob stepped forward. You smell like trail dust and cheap whiskey. My guess is you're one of Crawford's men. Am I wrong? The man's face paled. That was all the answer Jacob needed. You go back to your boss. Tell him Ruth Baker and her children are under my protection. He wants them, he comes through me first. And tell him. Jacob leaned close, his voice dropping to a whisper. Tell him I'm a man who buries what he kills. He might want to think on that before he makes his next move. He released the man, who stumbled backward, nearly fell, then turned and ran for his horse. Jacob watched him go, then turned to Sam. The boy was picking himself up off the ground, his lip bleeding, his eyes blazing with shame and fury. "I had him," Sam spat. "I didn't need your help." "Never said you did." Jacob offered his hand. "But a man who fights your battles alone is a fool. Ain't no shame in accepting backup." Sam stared at the offered hand. For a long moment, Jacob thought he'd refuse. Then slowly, the boy reached out and took it. "Thank you." Sam muttered the words, clearly costing him. "You're welcome." Jacob pulled him to his feet. "Now come on. Your mama's worried." Ruth was waiting around the corner, Josie clinging to her skirts, her face white with fear. "What happened?" "I heard shouting." "Nothing that won't heal." Jacob put a hand on Sam's shoulder. "Your boy stood up for his family. Man said something he shouldn't have. Sam made sure he regretted it." Ruth looked at Sam, at his bleeding lip and bruised knuckles. For a moment, Jacob thought she might scold him. Instead, she pulled him into a fierce embrace. "My brave boy," she whispered. "My brave, foolish, wonderful boy." Sam stood stiff for a moment. Then his arms came up, and he held his mother tight, his face buried in her shoulder, his own shoulders shaking. Josie tugged at Jacob's sleeve. "Is Sam okay?" "He will be." "Are we safe?" Jacob looked at the family before him. Ruth holding Sam. Josie pressed against his leg. Maggie and the younger children emerging from the boarding house with worried faces. "Yeah," he said quietly. "You're safe." But even as he said it, he knew it was a promise he might not be able to keep. Crawford's man had found them. That meant Crawford himself wasn't far behind. The reckoning was coming, and when it arrived, Jacob would be ready. Chapter C. Crawford came 3 days later. Jacob saw him first, a black carriage rolling into Willow Creek like a storm cloud on wheels. Fine horses, polished wood, the kind of transport that screamed money and power in a town that had little of either. He was sitting on the boarding house porch when the carriage stopped in front of the sheriff's office. 2 men climbed out first, hired muscle from the look of them. Hard eyes, guns worn low on their hips. Then came the man himself. Silas Crawford was tall and thin, with dark hair slicked back and clothes too fine for Montana dust. He carried a silver-headed cane he clearly didn't need tapping it against his palm as he surveyed the town with the expression of a man examining something he intended to buy. "That's him." Sam's voice came from behind Jacob, tight with fear and hatred. "That's Uncle Silas." "I figured." Jacob stood slowly. "Go inside. Tell your mama to keep the children quiet and away from the windows." "I ain't hiding." "This ain't about hiding. It's about keeping your sisters and brothers safe while I find out what Crawford wants." Jacob met Sam's eyes. "Can you do that?" Sam's jaw worked. Then he nodded once and disappeared inside. Jacob walked down the porch steps and headed toward the sheriff's office. He didn't hurry. Men like Crawford fed on fear, on the scramble of people trying to get out of their way. Jacob refused to give him that satisfaction. Brennan was already outside, his hand resting casual on his gun belt. "Mr. Crawford." The sheriff's voice was flat. "Welcome to Willow Creek. What brings you to our town?" "Sheriff Brennan, I presume." Crawford's voice was smooth-cultured with the faintest hint of condescension. "I'm here on a family matter. My brother's widow and her children, I have reason to believe they're being held here against their will." "Against their will." Brennan raised an eyebrow. "Funny. I talked to Mrs. Baker just yesterday. She seemed pretty willing to be here. Mrs. Baker is not well. She's suffered from hysteria since my brother's death. The doctors in Denver recommended she be placed under care, but she fled before treatment could begin." Crawford's smile was all teeth and no warmth. "I'm simply here to bring her and my nieces and nephews home, where they belong." "That ain't how she tells it." "Of course not. The nature of her illness makes her distrustful, paranoid. She believes everyone is against her. It's tragic, really." Crawford's eyes slid past Brennan and landed on Jacob. "And who might this be?" "Jacob McAllister." Jacob's voice was steady. I'm the one who found Mrs. Baker and her children half dead in the prairie, starving, dehydrated, covered in bruises. Ah. Crawford's expression didn't flicker. Yes, I heard about your heroic rescue, very noble. But I'm afraid you've been deceived, Mr. McAllister. Whatever story Ruth told you. She told me you beat her, that you tried to take her children, that you chased her across 3 territories when she ran. Lies, the delusions of a sick woman. The bruises on her body ain't delusions. The fear in her children's eyes ain't delusions. Jacob stepped forward. I've seen what you did, Crawford, and I ain't gonna let you do it again. Crawford's smile remained fixed, but something cold flickered in his eyes. Let me be clear, Mr. McAllister. Ruth is my legal responsibility. Those children are my brother's blood, my blood. I have every right to take them home. You got no rights, not here. The law says otherwise. Crawford reached into his coat and produced a folded document. A court order from Denver, granting me temporary guardianship of the children and authority to return Ruth to proper medical care. He handed the paper to Brennan. As you can see, everything is perfectly legal. Brennan read the document, his face darkening with each line. When he looked up, his expression was grim. This paper says you got custody of the children pending a formal hearing. Says Ruth Baker was declared mentally unfit by a Dr. Harrison in Denver. He met Jacob's eyes. It's signed by a territorial judge. That judge was bought. Jacob's voice was hard. So was that doctor. You know it and I know it. Maybe so. But until someone proves different, this is legal and binding. Brennan's jaw tightened. I don't like it any more than you do, Jake. But I'm sworn to uphold the law. Crawford's smile widened. I'm glad we understand each other, Sheriff. Now, if you'll direct me to where Ruth and the children are staying. No. The word came from behind them. Ruth stood at the end of the street, pale but steady, her chin raised in defiance. Maggie flanked her on one side, Sam on the other. The younger children were nowhere in sight. Hidden, Jacob hoped somewhere Crawford couldn't reach. Ruth, Crawford's voice softened into something almost tender. My dear sister, look at you so thin, so worn. This running has taken such a toll on you. I ain't your sister. Ruth's voice was ice. I was Thomas's wife. That don't make me yours. Family is family, and I'm only trying to help. Crawford took a step toward her. Come home, Ruth. Let me take care of you and the children, the way Thomas would have wanted. Thomas would have wanted you dead for what you've done. Ruth didn't flinch. He knew what you were, Silas. He told me before he died, don't ever let Silas near our children. Those were some of his last words. Something ugly flashed across Crawford's face, just for a moment. Then the mask of concern slid back into place. You're unwell, Ruth. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. I know you wanted Thomas's land because you heard there might be gold in the hills. I know you tried to get him to sign it over and he refused. I know you did nothing to save him when that mine collapsed. You just stood there and watched while they pulled his body from the rubble. That's enough. Crawford's voice had lost its smoothness. I won't stand here and be slandered by a hysterical woman. Sheriff, I have a legal document. I demand you enforce it. Brennan looked at Ruth, then at Crawford, then at the hired men standing ready behind their employer. His hand moved closer to his gun. I'll enforce the law, he said slowly. But I'll do it my way. The children stay where they are tonight. Tomorrow we'll have a hearing. Ruth can tell her side. You can tell yours. And a judge can decide what's right. There's already been a judge. A judge in Denver. This is Willow Creek. Our judge will want to hear from both parties before he hands over 6 children to a man their mother says beat her. Crawford's face reddened. You're making a mistake, Sheriff. I have powerful friends. I can make things very difficult for this town. Reckon you can. Brennan's voice was calm. But that's a problem for tomorrow. Right now, I'm telling you to find a room at the hotel, keep your men in check, and wait for the hearing like a civilized man. You cause trouble tonight, I'll throw you in a cell regardless of what papers you're carrying." The two men stared at each other. The tension stretched tight as a wire. Then Crawford stepped back, that cold smile returning. "Very well. A hearing. Tomorrow. But I warn you, Sheriff, the law is on my side. And when that becomes clear, I expect full cooperation in returning what belongs to me." He turned and walked back toward his carriage, his hired men falling into step behind him. At the carriage door, he paused and looked back at Ruth. "Sleep well tonight, sister. It's the last night you'll spend away from home." The carriage rolled away toward the hotel. Only when it was out of sight did Ruth's composure crack. Her knees buckled, and Jacob caught her before she fell. "I got you." His voice was low, steady. "I got you." "He's going to take them." Ruth's voice was barely a whisper. "That paper, it's real, isn't it legal? He's going to take my children, and there's nothing I can do." "That ain't gonna happen." "You don't know that. You heard the sheriff, the law's on his side." "The law's on the side of whoever argues better." Jacob helped her straighten, keeping his hands on her shoulders. "Tomorrow you tell your truth. Every beating, every threat, every reason you ran. And we make that judge understand that the law in Denver ain't the same as justice." "What if it's not enough?" Jacob looked at her, this woman who'd walked into the wilderness to save her children, who'd starved herself so they could eat, who'd stood up to her abuser even now, even terrified. Something fierce rose in his chest. "Then we find another way. I ain't gonna let him take you, Ruth. I ain't gonna let him take those children. Whatever it costs, whatever I have to do, you're staying free." Ruth stared at him, tears streaming down her face. "Why? Why do you care so much?" "Because I couldn't save my own family. But maybe I can save yours." That night, nobody slept. Jacob sat guard in the hallway, his rifle across his knees. Sam sat with him, refusing to be sent to bed despite Jacob's protests. "If he comes," Sam said quietly, "I want to be ready." "He won't come tonight. Too public. Too many witnesses. Crawford's the kind of man who likes his violence legal and clean." "That don't make me feel better." "Wasn't meant to. Just the truth." They sat in silence for a while. Then Sam spoke again, his voice barely audible. "What if we lose tomorrow? What if the judge sides with him?" "Then we run again, head north into Canada. He can't follow us there. Mama's not strong enough, the little ones neither. Then we make them strong enough. We do what we have to." Sam turned to look at him, his young face hard with determination. "You'd really do that? Give up everything, your ranch, your life here to help us?" "Already told you, you're under my protection. That don't have limits." Something shifted in Sam's expression. The last of the suspicion, the final wall between them, crumbled. "I'm sorry," Sam whispered, "for how I treated you, for not trusting you." "You had reason not to trust. I had to earn it." "You did." Sam's voice cracked. "You earned it. And if we get through this, I'd be proud to call you." He stopped, unable to finish. "You don't have to say it." Jacob put a hand on the boy's shoulder. "I know." Ruth emerged from her room near midnight, unable to stay still any longer. She found Jacob and Sam in the hallway and sat down across from them, her back against the wall. "The children are sleeping," she said. "Finally. Josie had nightmares, but Maggie calmed her down." "Good. They need rest for tomorrow." Ruth was quiet for a moment. Then, "I've been thinking about what to say at the hearing. How to make them understand what Silas really is. Tell the truth. That's all you can do." "The truth!" Ruth laughed bitterly. "The truth is, I'm a woman alone with 6 children, and no money and no power. The truth is, Silas has lawyers and judges and all the weight of society on his side. The truth is, men like him always win. Not always. Name one time they didn't." Jacob thought about it. There was a man in my unit during the war. Rich man's son used to getting whatever he wanted. Treated the enlisted men like dirt. One day, he gave an order that would have gotten a dozen men killed for no reason. A sergeant, a farmer from Ohio, nobody special, stood up and refused. Said he'd rather be shot for insubordination than watch his men die for one man's pride. What happened? The colonel heard about it, sided with the sergeant. The rich man's son was transferred in disgrace. Jacob met Ruth's eyes. Sometimes the little people win. Not often, but sometimes. And tomorrow we're going to make sure this is one of those times. How can you be so sure? I ain't sure. I'm just stubborn. Ruth almost smiled. That I believe. The hearing convened at 10 in the morning in the town hall that doubled as a courtroom when needed. Judge Warren Haskell presided, a stern man in his 60s with a reputation for fairness and a low tolerance for nonsense. Crawford sat at one table with his lawyer, a sleek man from Denver, who looked like he'd never lost a case. Ruth sat at the other with Jacob beside her and Brennan serving as informal counsel. The children sat in the front row. Maggie held Hope. Sam held Josie's hand. Billy and Carrie pressed close together, their faces pale with fear. This hearing will come to order. Haskell's voice cut through the murmur of the crowded room. We're here to determine the custody of the minor children of Thomas and Ruth Baker. Mr. Crawford claims legal guardianship. Mrs. Baker disputes that claim. Let's hear the arguments. Crawford's lawyer stood first, smooth and confident. He presented the court order from Denver, the doctor's assessment of Ruth's mental state, the argument that a widow without means couldn't properly care for 6 children. He painted Crawford as a concerned relative, stepping in to save his brother's family from destitution and neglect. It was convincing. Jacob watched the faces in the crowd and saw people nodding along, saw doubt creeping into their eyes. Then it was Ruth's turn. She stood slowly, her hands trembling, but her voice steady. Your Honor, everything Mr. Crawford's lawyer said sounds reasonable. It sounds like a man trying to help his family. But it ain't the truth. She took a breath. The truth is, Silas Crawford wanted my husband's land. When Thomas wouldn't sign it over, Silas waited. Waited until Thomas was dead, and I was alone. Then he came to me with an offer, marry him and hand over the property, or he'd take my children. That's a lie. Crawford surged to his feet. I never... Sit down, Mr. Crawford. Haskell's voice was sharp. You'll have your chance to respond. Continue, Mrs. Baker. Ruth's hands tightened on the rail in front of her. When I refused, he hit me. The first time was in front of my children. My daughter Carrie saw it happen. She ain't been the same since. Her voice caught. After that, I knew I couldn't stay. I packed my children and ran in the middle of the night. We've been running for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of sleeping in barns and begging for food and watching my babies grow thinner every day. 3 weeks of terror every time we heard hoofbeats behind us. And the court order? Haskell asked. The doctor's assessment. I never saw any doctor. Never went to any hearing. Whatever papers Silas has, they were made without my knowledge or consent. Ruth looked at Crawford and her eyes blazed. He didn't want a hearing. He wanted to take my children and drag me back to a life where I had no voice and no choice. He wanted to own us the way he owns everything else. These are serious allegations. Haskell turned to Crawford. Your response? Crawford stood, composing his features into wounded innocence. Your Honor, I don't know what delusions Ruth is suffering from, but I assure you everything I've done has been for the well-being of my nieces and nephews. The court order is legitimate. The doctor's assessment was made by a respected physician. Ruth simply doesn't remember because her illness affects her memory and judgment. Convenient, Jacob muttered. You have something to say, Mr. McAllister? Haskell's gaze swung to him. Jacob stood. I found Mrs. Baker and her children half dead in the prairie, Your Honor. The woman was unconscious. The baby was starving, and they were covered in bruises. Bruises too old to have come from the wilderness. Someone beat that woman before she ever ran, and from what I've seen, Crawford's the only one with reason to do it. That's circumstantial at best, Crawford's lawyer interjected. There's no proof, my client. I got proof. Sam's voice cut through the room. He stood up, his young face set with determination. I saw it happen. I saw Uncle Silas hit my mama more than once, and I saw him threaten to take us away if she didn't do what he wanted. The boy is biased, Crawford's lawyer dismissed. He'd say anything to stay with his mother. What about me? Maggie stood too. I saw it. I heard him say he'd make Mama sorry she ever refused him. And me. Carrie's voice was barely a whisper, but in the quiet courtroom everyone heard it. I saw him hit Mama so hard she fell down. There was blood. So much blood. I have nightmares about it every night. One by one the children stood. Even Billy. Even Josie, who didn't fully understand what was happening, but knew she needed to be brave. 6 witnesses. 6 children who'd seen their mother beaten and threatened. 6 voices against one man's lies. Haskell's face was unreadable, but something shifted in his eyes as he looked at those children. Mr. Crawford, he said slowly, these are serious accusations. Multiple witnesses. If what they're saying is true, it's not true. Crawford's composure finally cracked. They're lying. Ruth has turned them against me, poisoned their minds with her delusions. They're children, Mr. Crawford. Children don't lie with this much consistency unless they've been coached. And I don't believe Mrs. Baker has had time to coach anyone. Haskell leaned forward. I'm going to ask you directly, and I want a straight answer. Did you strike Ruth Baker? Crawford's face went red, then white. His lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently, but Crawford shook him off. She defied me, he hissed. She had no right, my brother's property, my brother's children, they should have been mine. I was the eldest. I should have inherited everything. But Thomas always had to be the favorite, always had to have more, and then he had to go and die and leave it all to her. He stopped realizing what he'd just said. The courtroom was dead silent. I see. Haskell's voice was ice. Mr. Crawford, based on your own testimony, I'm denying your petition for custody. The children will remain with their mother. Furthermore, I'm issuing a restraining order. You are to have no contact with Ruth Baker or her children. If you violate this order, you will be arrested and held for trial. You can't do this. Crawford's voice was strangled. I have rights. You have no rights over people you've abused. Haskell banged his gavel. This hearing is adjourned. Sheriff, please escort Mr. Crawford from my courtroom. What happened next happened fast. Crawford lunged forward, pulling a derringer from inside his coat. His face was twisted with rage, all pretense of civilization gone. If I can't have them, nobody will. He aimed at Ruth. Jacob moved without thinking. He threw himself between Ruth and the gun, felt the impact like a punch to the shoulder, heard the screams erupt around him. Then Sam was there, tackling Crawford from the side, sending the gun flying. Brennan was there too, wrestling Crawford to the ground, shouting for his deputies. Jacob hit the floor, his shoulder on fire, his vision swimming. Ruth's face appeared above him, tears streaming, her hands pressing against the wound. Jacob, Jacob, stay with me. Did I get him? Jacob's voice came out weak. Did I stop him? You stopped him. You saved me. Ruth was sobbing. Don't you dare die on me, Jacob McAllister. Don't you dare. Wasn't planning on it. He tried to smile. Told you I'd protect you. A man keeps his word. Then the darkness took him. Side. Cowboy. Jacob woke to pain and the smell of carbolic soap. He tried to move and regretted it immediately. Fire shot through his shoulder, pulling a groan from somewhere deep in his chest. Don't move. Ruth's voice came from somewhere close. Doc Whitfield said you need to stay still or you'll tear the stitches. Jacob forced his eyes open. Ruth sat beside the bed, her face pale, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. How long? His voice came out as a croak. 3 days. The fever broke last night. Ruth's hand found his, her fingers cold and trembling. We thought Doc said the bullet nicked something important. Said you lost too much blood. Said... Her voice cracked. I thought you were gonna die, Jacob. I thought I was gonna have to bury you alongside Thomas and my parents and everyone else I've ever loved. Takes more than a derringer to put me down. Don't joke. Don't you dare joke about this. Tears spilled down Ruth's cheeks. You threw yourself in front of a bullet for me. You could have died. You almost did. I'd do it again. I know you would. That's what terrifies me. Jacob tried to sit up, gasped at the pain, and fell back against the pillows. Ruth was on her feet immediately, adjusting the blankets, checking his bandages, her movements quick and anxious. The children, Jacob managed. They're fine. Worried sick about you, but fine. Josie's been asking every hour when Mr. Jake is gonna wake up. Billy carved you something, won't tell anyone what it is. Says it's a secret till you're better. Ruth's voice softened. Sam hasn't left the house since it happened. He blames himself. Why? Because he tackled Crawford after you were shot, not before. He keeps saying if he'd been faster, if he'd seen the gun sooner. That boy saved my life. If he hadn't knocked Crawford down, there would have been a second shot. Jacob's jaw tightened. Crawford. What happened to him? Jail. Sheriff Brennan's got him locked up tight. The judge added attempted murder to the charges. His fancy lawyers tried to get him released on bail, but Judge Haskell refused. Ruth's expression hardened. He's not getting out, Jacob. Not ever. They're transferring him to Denver next week for trial. Brennan says with all the witnesses, the whole town saw what he did, he'll hang. Good. The word was cold final. Ruth didn't argue. They sat in silence for a while. Jacob drifted in and out, the pain and exhaustion pulling him under Ruth's hand, anchoring him to the surface. When he woke again, it was dark outside, and someone small was curled up at the foot of his bed. Josie wouldn't leave. Ruth's voice came from the chair. She fell asleep waiting for you to wake up. Jacob looked at the tiny form, her face peaceful in sleep, her hand clutching the blanket like a lifeline. Something twisted in his chest that had nothing to do with the bullet wound. She's a good girl. She loves you. Ruth's voice was quiet. They all do in their own ways. Even Sam, though he'd rather die than admit it out loud. And you? The question hung in the air. Jacob hadn't meant to ask it. The words had slipped out before he could stop them. Ruth was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I don't know what I feel. Everything's happened so fast. 3 weeks ago, I was running for my life, convinced I'd never be safe again. Now Crawford's in jail, my children are fed and warm and sleeping through the night, and there's a man in front of me who took a bullet rather than let me be hurt. She paused. I didn't think men like you existed, Jacob. I thought Thomas was the exception, the one good man in a world full of bad ones. And then he died, and I thought that was it. I thought I'd never feel safe with anyone again. And now I'm scared. Ruth's voice trembled. Not of you. Of how much I want to trust you. Of how much I want... She stopped, unable to finish. Jacob reached out with his good arm and found her hand in the darkness. You don't have to know right now. You don't have to feel anything you ain't ready to feel. Whatever this is between us, we got time to figure it out. Time ain't been kind to me, Jacob. Everyone I love gets taken away. I ain't going anywhere. You almost did. 3 days ago I watched them carry you into Doc Whitfield's office with blood soaking through your shirt, and I thought... Ruth's composure shattered. I thought God was punishing me again. For being happy. For daring to hope. I thought he was taking you away because I let myself care. Ruth. Jacob's voice was firm despite the weakness. Come here. She hesitated, then moved to sit on the edge of the bed. Carefully mindful of his wound and the sleeping child at their feet, Jacob pulled her down to rest against his uninjured side. I ain't going anywhere, he repeated. Not because I'm lucky or blessed or protected by angels, but because I got something to live for now. For the first time in 10 years, I got a reason to fight. You gave me that. You and those children." Ruth was crying openly now, her tears soaking into his shirt. "I don't deserve—" "Don't tell me what you deserve. You deserve everything. A home. Safety. Someone who looks at you like you're the sun coming up. And I aim to give you all of it if you'll let me." "Jacob." "You don't have to answer now. Just know that when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll be here." Ruth lifted her head and looked at him. In the dim light, her tear-streaked face was the most beautiful thing Jacob had ever seen. "I think," she whispered, "I think I might already be ready." She kissed him. It was gentle, tentative, the kiss of two wounded people reaching toward each other through the dark. Jacob tasted salt and fear and something that might have been hope. When she pulled back, Ruth was trembling. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have your shoulder." "Worth it." Jacob managed a smile. "Worth every bit of pain." Ruth laughed a watery, broken sound and laid her head back against his chest. They stayed like that until dawn, neither of them sleeping, just holding on to each other like survivors of a shipwreck who'd finally found solid ground. Recovery was slow and frustrating. Jacob had never been a patient man, and being confined to bed while his body healed drove him half mad. But the children helped. Billy came every morning with questions about horses, about the war, about how to throw a punch properly. Jacob answered them all, grateful for the distraction. Carrie came in the afternoons bringing her whittling and sitting quietly while she worked. She didn't talk much, but her presence was a comfort. Sometimes she'd show Jacob what she was making: a bird, a horse, a tiny figure that might have been a person, and he'd offer suggestions while trying not to let on how much it meant that she trusted him enough to share. Josie came whenever she could escape Maggie's watchful eye. She'd climb onto the bed and chatter endlessly about everything and nothing: the cat she'd seen behind the mercantile, the flowers growing by the church, the dream she'd had about flying. Jacob listened to it all, letting her voice wash over him like sunshine. Maggie came in the evenings, usually bringing food and updates about the household. She was practical, efficient, and had a dry sense of humor that surprised Jacob. "Mama's been cooking," she reported one night. "Actual cooking, not just heating things up. Agnes taught her a new recipe." "She any good?" "She burned the first batch. Second one was edible. Third one was actually tasty." Maggie allowed herself a small smile. "I think she's trying to impress you." "She don't need to impress me." "I know, but she wants to." Maggie's expression sobered. "You make her happy, Mr. McAllister." "I ain't seen her happy in a long time, so don't mess it up." "Wasn't planning on it." "Good, because if you do, I'll make your life very difficult." Jacob believed her. Sam came least often, but his visits meant the most. The boy would sit in the corner pretending to read stealing glances at Jacob when he thought no one was looking. The guilt was written all over his face. "Wasn't your fault," Jacob said finally on the fourth day. "What happened at the hearing? None of it was your fault." Sam's book lowered. "I should have seen the gun. Should have moved faster." "You tackled a grown man with a weapon. You knocked him down before he could fire again. That ain't failure, son. That's courage. You still got shot. And I'm still alive, because of you." Jacob met Sam's eyes. "Your pa would be proud, Sam. I know I would be if you were mine." Sam's face crumpled. He set the book down and crossed the room in 3 quick strides, dropping to his knees beside the bed. "I was so scared," he choked out. "When you went down, there was so much blood and Mama was screaming and I thought—" He couldn't finish. Jacob put his good hand on the boy's head. I know what you thought. But I'm here. I ain't going anywhere." "Promise." "Promise." Sam stayed for an hour after that, talking more than he had in weeks. About his father. About the fear and responsibility he'd carried for so long. About the guilt he felt for not being able to protect his mother from Silas. About the relief, shameful, overwhelming relief that someone else was finally sharing the burden. You don't have to carry it all anymore, Jacob told him. That's what family's for. Family. Sam tested the word. Is that what we are? What do you want us to be? Sam was quiet for a long moment. Then so softly Jacob almost missed it. I want you to be my pa. Not to replace the real one, but to be what he would have been if he'd lived. Jacob's throat tightened. Then that's what I'll be, if you'll have me. I'll have you. 2 weeks after the shooting, Jacob was well enough to leave Doc Whitfield's office. He walked out on his own 2 feet, his shoulders still bound, but healing clean Ruth on one side and Sam on the other. The town had gathered to see him off. Folks who'd looked at Ruth and her children with suspicion just weeks ago now called out greetings offering food and well wishes. The story had spread the cowboy who'd taken a bullet for a widow and her children. In Willow Creek, that kind of thing made a man a hero. You're popular, Ruth murmured. I'm uncomfortable is what I am. Too many eyes. Get used to it. You're stuck with us now. Jacob looked down at her. This woman who'd been through hell and come out fighting, who'd trusted him when she had every reason not to, who'd kissed him in the dark and made him believe in second chances. I can think of worse fates. Martha Jenkins had prepared the boarding house for their return. Fresh linens on the beds, flowers on the tables, a banner painted by Josie that read, "Welcome home, Mr. Jake," in crooked, enthusiastic letters. You didn't have to do all this, Jacob told Martha. Didn't have to. Wanted to. Martha's eyes were suspiciously bright. You gave this town something it needed, Mr. McAllister. A reminder that there's still good in the world. That's worth celebrating. The celebration was small, just the family and a few close friends. Agnes and Doc Whitfield came, and Sheriff Brennan and Reverend Prescott from the church. They ate and talked and laughed, and for the first time since Jacob could remember, his house felt full of life instead of ghosts. After the guests had gone and the children were in bed, Ruth found Jacob on the porch, staring out at the stars. You're supposed to be resting. Rested enough. He shifted to make room for her on the bench. Just thinking. About what? About what comes next. Jacob turned to look at her. Crawford's going to trial. He'll hang for what he did. But after that, when it's all over, what happens to you and the children? Ruth was quiet for a moment. I've been thinking about that too. Doc Whitfield talked to the town council about the schoolhouse. They want me to take the teaching position. Pays enough to keep us fed with a little left over. That's good. You'll be good at it. I hope so. Ruth hesitated. But I've been thinking about something else too. About us. Jacob's heart kicked. What about us? I know it's too soon. I know there's 100 reasons why this is crazy. But... Ruth took a breath. I love you, Jacob. I didn't want to. I tried not to. But somewhere between you carrying me out of that prairie and you stepping in front of a bullet for me, I fell in love with you. And I don't know what to do about it. Jacob stared at her. The words he'd hoped for, dreamed about in the long nights of recovery, were finally real. And now that they were here, he didn't know what to say. You don't have to do anything about it, he managed. We can take our time, figure things out slow. I don't want slow. Ruth's voice was fierce. I've spent 3 years being afraid. 3 years waiting for the next disaster, the next loss, the next reason to keep my walls up. I'm tired, Jacob. I'm tired of being scared. I want to live. I want to love. I want to wake up every morning knowing I'm not alone. She reached for his hand. I want you. Ruth. I know there's no guarantee. I know life takes people away. But if I've learned anything from all this, it's that waiting for the safe moment means waiting forever. There is no safe moment. There's only now. She squeezed his hand. So I'm asking you, Jacob McAllister, not to promise me forever. Just to promise me today, and tomorrow, and as many days as we get. Jacob looked at her, this woman of impossible courage, who'd survived things that would have broken anyone else who still had hope enough to love again. He thought about Sarah and Emma, buried in the cold ground 10 years ago. About the life he'd given up when he lost them. About the wall he'd built around his heart. Then he thought about Josie's arms around his leg, and Sam calling him family, and the way Billy's face lit up when Jacob taught him something new. He thought about Carrie's quiet trust, and Maggie's fierce loyalty, and Baby Hope's innocent smile. He thought about Ruth's kiss in the darkness, and knew his answer had been decided long before she asked. "I ain't good with words," he said slowly. "Never have been. But I can tell you this, when I found you in that prairie, something in me woke up. Something I thought was dead. You and those children, you brought me back to life, and I ain't interested in going back to the way things were." He pulled her close, mindful of his healing shoulder, and looked into her eyes. "I love you, Ruth Baker. I love your strength and your stubbornness and the way you put your children before everything else. I love the way you laugh when you're surprised and cry when you're happy and fight like hell when someone threatens what's yours." He touched her face gently. "I want to spend whatever time I've got left making sure you never have to fight alone again." Ruth was crying happy tears this time, the kind that came with smiles instead of sorrow. "Is that a yes?" "That's a yes." She kissed him again, longer this time, deeper. And when they finally pulled apart, both of them breathless, Jacob felt something settle into place in his chest. Something that had been broken for a decade, finally made whole. "We should tell the children," Ruth said. "Tomorrow. Tonight, let's just have this." They sat together on the porch, wrapped in each other's arms, watching the stars wheel overhead. Tomorrow would bring questions and plans, and the complicated work of blending two broken families into one whole. Tomorrow there would be Crawford's trial and practical concerns, and the 100 small challenges of building a life together. But tonight, there was just this. Two people who'd found each other against all odds. Who'd chosen love over fear. Who'd decided that the risk of losing was worth the chance of having. Jacob closed his eyes and breathed in the scent of Ruth's hair, the cool night air, the faint smell of the prairie grass. He thought about what it meant to be happy, truly happy for the first time in 10 years. It felt like coming home. When Ruth finally stirred, pulling reluctantly away, the eastern sky was starting to lighten. "The children will be up soon. Let them sleep a little longer." Jacob caught her hand before she could stand. "Stay, just a few more minutes." Ruth settled back against him with a soft sigh. "We're really doing this, aren't we, you and me? A family." "Seems like it. You know it won't be easy. 6 children, Jacob, 6. Billy alone will run you ragged. And Josie never stops talking. And Sam's a good boy who needed someone to look up to. He's already coming around. And when they fight, when they test you, when they push back against having a new father, then I'll handle it, the way Thomas would have handled it, with patience and love and the occasional firm hand." Jacob kissed the top of her head. "I ain't scared of hard work, Ruth. I'm scared of being alone. I'm scared of wasting whatever years I got left on empty rooms and quiet nights. I'm scared of—" He paused, searching for the words. "Of never mattering to anyone again." Ruth turned in his arms, cupping his face in her hands. "You matter. To me, to my children, to this whole town after what you did. You matter more than you know." "Then help me believe it. Stay with me. Let me stay with you. Always." The sun broke over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Somewhere inside, Jacob heard the first stirrings of the children, waking Billy's loud yawn, Josie's sleepy chatter, the soft cries of Baby Hope ready for her morning feeding. A new day, a new beginning, a new family, built from the wreckage of old wounds and held together by something stronger than blood. Jacob stood offering Ruth his hand. "Ready." Ruth took it, her smile brighter than the sunrise. "Ready." They walked inside together. They told the children at breakfast. Jacob had expected questions, resistance, maybe even anger. What he got was Josie launching herself across the table and nearly knocking him off his chair. "You're gonna be our papa. You're really gonna be our papa." "Easy, Josie." Ruth caught her daughter before she could crush Jacob's healing shoulder. "Let the man breathe." "But Mama, this is the best day ever. Better than Christmas. Better than my birthday." Josie was bouncing with excitement. "Can I call you Papa now? Can I please?" Jacob looked at Ruth, who nodded with tears in her eyes. "Yeah, little one, you can call me Papa." Billy whooped so loud the windows rattled. Carrie smiled, really smiled, the first genuine one Jacob had seen from her. Even Maggie, who'd been watching with her usual cautious expression, allowed herself a small grin. Only Sam stayed quiet, his face unreadable. Jacob caught his eye across the table. "You all right with this, son?" Sam was silent for a long moment. Then he stood, walked around the table, and extended his hand. "Welcome to the family, Pa." Jacob shook it, then pulled the boy into a one-armed hug. Sam stiffened for just a second, before returning the embrace, his shoulders shaking with emotions he'd held back for too long. "Thank you," Sam whispered, "for everything. Thank me by helping your mama with the dishes. I'm still on restricted duty." Sam laughed, actually laughed, and the sound was like music. The wedding was set for 3 weeks out, enough time for Jacob's shoulder to finish healing, and for Ruth to make arrangements with the schoolhouse. Reverend Prescott agreed to perform the ceremony, and Martha Jenkins insisted on hosting the reception at the boarding house. "You've given this town more excitement than it's seen in years," Martha said. "Least we can do is give you a proper celebration." The preparations kept everyone busy. Ruth threw herself into planning with an energy Jacob hadn't seen before. She was everywhere at once, consulting with Agnes about food, working with the schoolchildren who'd volunteered to make decorations, even taking Maggie and Carrie to the mercantile to pick out fabric for new dresses. "You sure you want to do all this?" Jacob asked her one evening. "We could just have the Reverend marry us quiet-like. No fuss." Ruth shook her head firmly. "I spent my first wedding terrified of what was coming next. Thomas was a good man, but I was so young, so uncertain. This time—" She paused, her eyes bright. "This time, I want to celebrate. I want everyone to see that I'm choosing this. Choosing you. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Then we'll have the biggest shindig this town's ever seen." "That might be overdoing it." "Woman, you took a chance on a broken-down cowboy with nothing but a ranch and a bad attitude. Least I can do is give you a wedding worth remembering." News of Crawford's trial came 2 days before the wedding. Sheriff Brennan rode out to Jacob's ranch because that's where they were living now, all 8 of them crammed into a house built for one with a telegram from Denver. "Guilty on all counts. Attempted murder, assault, conspiracy. Judge sentenced him to hang." Brennan handed over the paper. "Execution set for next month." Ruth took the news in silence, her face pale but composed. Jacob watched her carefully, ready to offer comfort, but she shook her head when he reached for her. "I need a minute." She walked out to the porch and stood there staring at the mountains, her arms wrapped around herself. Jacob gave her space, keeping the children occupied inside while she processed. When she finally came back, in her eyes were dry, but her voice was rough. "He's really going to die." "Yes. I should feel something. Relief, satisfaction, justice." Ruth laughed bitterly. "But I just feel tired. So tired." "That's all right. You don't have to feel any particular way. He's been the monster under my bed for so long, and now he's going to be gone. Really gone." Ruth looked at Jacob. "What do I do with all that fear when there's nothing left to be afraid of?" "You let it go, bit by bit, day by day. And when it sneaks back up, you remember that you're not alone anymore. You've got me. You've got the children. You've got a whole town of people who'd fight for you." It sounds so simple when you say it. Simple ain't the same as easy, but you're the strongest woman I've ever known, Ruth. If anyone can do it, you can. Ruth stepped into his arms, burying her face against his chest. I love you, Jacob McAllister. Love you too. Now come on, we've got a wedding to finish planning. The morning of the ceremony dawned clear and bright. Jacob woke early, too nervous to sleep, and found Sam already up sitting on the porch with 2 cups of coffee. Couldn't sleep either. Jacob took the offered cup. Nope. Sam stared out at the land, his young face thoughtful. Keep thinking about Pa, wondering what he'd say about all this. What do you think he'd say? Sam considered the question. I think he'd be glad. He always worried about what would happen to us if something happened to him. Used to tell Mama that she was stronger than she knew, but she'd need help raising 6 kids on her own. He glanced at Jacob. I think he'd be glad we found you, or you found us. However it worked. However it worked, Jacob agreed. For what it's worth, I wish I could have known him, your Pa. He was a good man. Not perfect, had a temper, sometimes worked too hard, never knew when to quit. But he loved us. That was never in doubt. Then I'll try to live up to his example. You already have. Sam stood draining his coffee. I should go wake Billy. He's supposed to help me get the wagon ready. Sam. Jacob caught his arm. You did good. These past months, keeping your family together, keeping them safe. Your Pa would be proud. Sam's eyes glistened. Thanks, Pa. The word still felt new, still felt precious. Jacob suspected it always would. The church was packed by noon. Every seat filled, people standing along the walls, even a few watching through the windows. Jacob had never been comfortable with crowds, but today the attention didn't bother him. Today all he could see was Ruth. She walked down the aisle on Sam's arm, wearing a dress of pale blue cotton that Agnes had helped her make. Her hair was pinned up with wildflowers Josie had picked that morning. She was smiling, really smiling, and Jacob felt his heart swell until he thought it might burst. Who gives this woman to be married? Reverend Prescott asked. Sam's voice rang out clear and strong. Her children do, all 6 of us. A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. Ruth squeezed Sam's hand, then stepped forward to take her place beside Jacob. Dearly beloved, Prescott began. We are gathered here today to witness the union of Jacob McAllister and Ruth Baker. These 2 have found each other through trials that would have broken lesser souls. They have faced danger, hardship, and loss, and emerged stronger for it. Today, they choose to face the future together as husband and wife. Jacob barely heard the rest of the ceremony. He was too busy looking at Ruth, at the tears on her cheeks, at the love in her eyes, at the way her hand trembled in his. When Prescott asked if he took this woman, his "I do" came out thick with emotion. Ruth's "I do" was barely a whisper, but it carried to every corner of the church. Then, by the power vested in me by God and the territory of Montana, I pronounce you husband and wife. Prescott smiled. Mr. McAllister, you may kiss your bride. Jacob pulled Ruth into his arms and kissed her properly. Kissed her the way he'd been wanting to for weeks. The crowd erupted in cheers, Billy's whoop loudest of all. When they finally broke apart, both of them breathless, Jacob looked out at the sea of faces. At Martha Jenkins dabbing her eyes. At Doc Whitfield and Agnes holding hands. At Sheriff Brennan grinning like a fool. At the 6 children in the front row, his children now beaming with joy. I love you, Mrs. McAllister, he murmured against Ruth's ear. I love you too, Mr. McAllister. Now, let's go celebrate. The reception lasted until well past dark. There was food and music and dancing, children running underfoot, old men telling stories, young couples sneaking off for private moments. Jacob danced with Ruth until his shoulder ached, then danced with Josie while she stood on his boots, then sat and watched while Sam twirled Maggie around the floor with surprising grace. He's a good dancer, Ruth observed, settling beside him. He's a good boy. They all are. They're your children now, legally, officially. Jacob had signed the adoption papers that morning right before the ceremony. Samuel Thomas McAllister, Margaret Rose McAllister, Caroline Jane McAllister, William James McAllister, Josephine Grace McAllister, Hope Elizabeth McAllister. 6 new names, 6 new lives, 1 new family. I know, he said. Still feels like a dream. It's not a dream. Ruth took his hand. It's real, all of it. The good parts and the hard parts and everything in between. No regrets, not a single one. The party wound down slowly. Guests trickled away calling out congratulations and well wishes. The children were carried home one by one. Billy asleep on Sam's back, Josie in Jacob's arms, Carrie walking close beside Ruth with Hope drowsy against her shoulder. By the time they reached the ranch, even Maggie was yawning. "Bedtime," Ruth announced. "Everyone, no arguments." For once, there weren't any. Jacob tucked Josie in first, listening to her sleepy chatter about the wedding, the flowers, the cake, the way Mama had looked like a princess. He kissed her forehead and promised to check on her in the morning. Billy was next, already half asleep, mumbling something about wanting to learn to dance like Sam. Jacob pulled the blanket up and roughed the boy's hair, earning a drowsy smile. Carrie was sitting up in bed, her wooden horse clutched in her hands. "Pa." The word still made Jacob's heart skip. "Yeah, sweetheart. Is this forever? You being here? Being our pa? Forever and a day. That good enough for you?" Carrie nodded solemnly. "That's good enough." He found Sam in the barn, checking on the horses one last time before bed. The boy, the young man, Jacob corrected himself, turned when he heard footsteps. "Just making sure they're settled." "I know." Jacob leaned against the stall door. "You've been doing that since you got here. Taking care of things. Making sure everything's right. Someone has to. Someone does. But it doesn't always have to be you, Sam. Not anymore." Sam was quiet for a moment. Then, "It's hard. Letting go. I've been responsible for so long." "I know. But part of growing up is learning when to carry the load and when to share it. You've earned the right to be a kid again, at least for a while." "I'm not sure I remember how." "Then we'll figure it out together. Fish in the creek behind the property. Ride out to the hills sometime. Do the things boys are supposed to do instead of worrying about survival every minute." Sam's expression softened. "That sounds nice." "It'll be better than nice. It'll be a life." Jacob put a hand on Sam's shoulder. "Now get to bed. We've got work tomorrow." "Yes, sir, Pa." Ruth was waiting in their bedroom now shared and permanent. She'd let her hair down and changed into a simple cotton nightgown. In the lamplight she looked young and vulnerable and impossibly beautiful. Children all settled. Every last one. Jacob closed the door and crossed to her. "Even Sam, which is saying something." "He's coming around. They all are." Ruth reached up to touch his face. "Are you happy, Jacob?" "Happier than I've got any right to be." "Me too." She rose on tiptoes and kissed him softly. "Thank you, for everything, for stopping that day in the prairie, for fighting for us, for loving us." "Easiest thing I ever did." "Liar." But she was smiling. "Now come to bed, husband. We've got the rest of our lives to start tomorrow." The months that followed weren't easy. Adjusting to life as a family of 8 took work, constant, exhausting, wonderful work. There were arguments and misunderstandings, and moments when Jacob wondered what he'd gotten himself into. Billy got into a fight at school and came home with a black eye. Carrie had nightmares that woke the whole house. Josie talked so much at dinner that food went cold before anyone could eat. Hope started walking and immediately tried to put everything she found into her mouth. But there were good moments too. More than good, there were moments of pure, unexpected joy that made all the hard parts worth it. Like the afternoon Sam brought home his first deer and stood there beaming while Jacob taught him how to dress it. Like the evening Carrie read her first whole book out loud, her voice gaining confidence with every page. Like the morning Josie presented Jacob with a drawing of their family, 8 stick figures holding hands under a lopsided sun, and announced she was going to be an artist when she grew up. Like the night Ruth told him she was pregnant. Jacob stared at her for a full 10 seconds, sure he'd misheard. "You're what?" "Pregnant." Ruth's smile was nervous. "About 2 months along, Doc Whitfield thinks." "But we. That's generally how it happens, yes? I know how it happens." Jacob sat down heavily on the edge of the bed. I didn't think. Neither did I. I'm 39, Jacob. I thought my childbearing years were behind me." Ruth sat beside him, taking his hand. "If you don't want. Jacob turned to face her, his expression fierce. "Woman, I want this more than I've ever wanted anything. I just didn't dare hope for it." "Really? Really?" He pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "A baby. Our baby. Something that's both of us. You're not upset. 7 children is a lot. 7 children is a blessing, more than I ever deserved." Jacob pulled back to look at her, his eyes bright. "When do we tell them?" They told the children at dinner. The reaction was everything Jacob could have hoped for. Billy wanted to know if it would be a boy, so he'd finally have a brother. Josie immediately started planning what games she'd teach the baby. Carrie asked if she could help with the nursery. Even Maggie, who'd been Ruth's helper through 6 pregnancies, seemed genuinely excited. Sam's reaction was quieter, but no less meaningful. He caught Jacob's eye across the table and nodded once, a gesture of acceptance and approval that said more than words ever could. "To the new baby," Sam said, raising his glass of milk. "And to our family." "To our family," everyone echoed. The baby came on a cold December night, 6 months later. Jacob paced the hallway, while Doc Whitfield and Agnes worked behind the closed bedroom door, his heart in his throat with every sound Ruth made. The children had been sent to Martha Jenkins for the night, all except Sam, who refused to leave. Father and son waited together, neither speaking, both terrified. When the cry came thin and strong and unmistakably alive, Jacob nearly collapsed with relief. "You can come in now," Agnes called. Ruth lay propped against the pillows, exhausted, but radiant, a small bundle in her arms. She looked up as Jacob entered, her eyes shining with tears. "It's a boy." Jacob crossed the room on legs that felt like water. He looked down at the tiny face, red and wrinkled and perfect, and felt his heart crack open for the 7th time. A boy. "I thought," Ruth's voice caught. "I thought we could call him Thomas, after—" "Thomas." Jacob touched the baby's cheek with one rough finger. "Thomas Jacob McAllister. Is that all right?" "It's perfect." Sam appeared in the doorway, his face pale with worry that dissolved into wonder when he saw the baby. "Is that your brother?" Ruth smiled, exhausted. "Come meet him." Sam approached slowly, reverently, as if the baby might break. He looked down at the tiny face, at the shock of dark hair, at the miniature fists waving in the air. "Hey there, little one," Sam whispered. "I'm your big brother. I'm going to teach you everything I know." The baby yawned, utterly unimpressed, and Sam laughed, a sound of pure, uncomplicated joy. Jacob looked at his wife, at his son, at his eldest who'd carried so much for so long and was finally learning to let go. He thought about the journey that had brought them here, the cry in the prairie, the desperate flight, the battles fought and won. He thought about Sarah and Emma, buried in the cold ground, and felt no guilt when he realized the grief had gentled. They would always be part of him, but they would want him to be happy. They would want him to live. And he was living. Finally, fully, completely living. "I love you," he told Ruth. "I love you too." She reached for his hand, pulling him down to sit beside her. "All of you, every single one of my children." "Our children," Jacob corrected. "Our children." Outside, snow began to fall, soft and quiet and clean. Inside, the fire crackled, the baby slept, and a family born from tragedy and hope settled into the long, sweet work of building a life together. A year later, on the anniversary of the day Jacob had found them in the prairie, Ruth gathered the whole family on the porch for a photograph. The traveling photographer set up his equipment while the children squirmed and fidgeted. "Everyone hold still," Ruth ordered. "This is important." "Why is it important?" Billy complained. "It's just a picture." "It's not just a picture, it's proof." Ruth looked out at her family. Jacob with baby Thomas in his arms, Sam standing tall and proud, Maggie holding Hope's hand, Carrie and Billy and Josie pressed close together. "It's proof that we made it, that we survived, that we built something beautiful out of all that pain." "Are you gonna cry, Mama?" Josie asked. "Probably." "That's okay. Happy crying is different." "Yes, baby. Happy crying is very different." The photographer ducked under his black cloth. "Everyone ready? On 3, 1, 2, 3. The flash went off. The moment was captured. And years later, when they were all grown and scattered and building families of their own, the children would look at that photograph and remember. They'd remember the way Jacob's arm wrapped protectively around Ruth, the way Sam stood like a young man instead of a frightened boy, the way Maggie's smile finally reached her eyes, the way Carrie held her wooden horse, the one Jacob had carved in her free hand, the way Billy and Josie leaned against each other like they'd never been apart, the way baby Thomas slept peacefully, unaware of all the struggles that had brought him into being. They'd remember, and they'd tell the story to their own children. The story of a baby crying in the prairie, of a cowboy who couldn't ride past, of a family built from wreckage and held together by love. Jacob lived another 32 years after that photograph was taken. He saw Sam become a lawyer who fought for women and children in the courts. He saw Maggie open her own school and teach 3 generations of Willow Creek's children. He saw Carrie become an artist whose paintings hung in galleries back east. He saw Billy grow into a rancher who took over the family land. He saw Josie marry a preacher and fill her house with laughter and song. He saw Hope become a doctor, like the man who'd saved her mother's life. He saw Thomas follow in his footsteps, learning the land, learning the work, learning what it meant to be a good man. He saw Ruth grow old beside him, her dark hair turning silver, her face lining with age and joy. He saw her standing at his bedside at the end, holding his hand the way he'd held hers so many times before. "I'll be waiting," he told her. "On the other side." "I know." Ruth kissed his forehead. "Thank you, Jacob, for everything. Thank you for letting me love you." He closed his eyes, and the last thing he heard was Ruth's voice, soft and steady, telling their children the story, one final time. The story of how a baby's cry changed everything. The story of a cowboy who stopped when everyone else rode past. The story of a family that refused to break. In the end, that's all any of us can hope for. Someone who stops. Someone who stays. Someone who turns a moment of chance into a lifetime of love. Jacob McAllister found that someone in a Montana prairie surrounded by grass and silence and the desperate cry of a child. He spent the rest of his life proving he was worthy of the gift. And in the end, he was.